Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi. So we are back at marketing management, a VUCA perspective, and we are going to talk about fundamentals, and this is the second module. I am your instructor, Siddhi Prad Bhattacharya. And in this particular context, we want to think of people who have come and spoken certain very, very valuable things, Confucius amongst them, and who has said that life is really simple, but we insist on making it complex and complicated. Precisely what is happening with the business world today. Things are getting complex and complicated, and not much is within our choice. So hence we must work assiduously to try and continuously make it simpler, easier to digest, easier to work with, and help our audiences, our consumers benefit from it. Because the more they benefit, the more we get them to stay on with us, the value they give us in our corporate experiences increases, and it stays with us over an entire lifetime. Now, the two parts of whatever we do and the results of it are embedded in this one word, causality, cause and effect. So whatever decisions we make as managers today, it has ramifications, it has ripple effects out there in the business space, and that is specifically why in a VUCA space we need to note that how a world around us is completely complex, and complexity being the core of VUCA, which we covered in the previous module as well. It talks about how we must always consider a variety of factors, and there are lots of ways to manage those particular factors where they impact business as such, and here we will come to know what those impacts are and how to best address them. This keeps a particular foundational story for you to prepare and get ready when you step into marketing as such and learn the discipline in a specific way, so that all these considerations, they help you create a particular strong, resilient brand of marketing, which you can therefore help your organization thrive with. So the lesson today is understanding impact areas and the effect on business scenarios. This is the second module. And in terms of quick recap, we have covered volatility, which is how quickly certain things change, uncertainty, where we don't know how things will change, and so therefore we must prepare for it, complexity, which tells us that many factors that actually affect business and the world we live in, and so therefore this is the core of VUCA. And finally, ambiguity. There is no way you will know everything that is going to happen. So how do you manage it? By being prepared to shift, by being prepared to pivot at a given moment's notice, which means that you have to prepare a lot many contingency plans, and so therefore you are better prepared to take on perceived and unknown threats that may arrive from future considerations. Why is this entire impact scenario important, and how can we address this? And you need to know this as managers. So today it's all about speed, all about quick, fast decisions and critically thought through decisions, all happening at the same point in time. You have to shift the way you do business. You have to look at ways that actually change the way you do your businesses, probably look at different kinds of products you bring in, maybe ways of getting better logistics and supply for your organization, and at times looking to shift the way things will be when it comes to reaching out to consumers, how their habits are, etc. So let's look at these examples here. You've got VUCA at the center. VUCA is about the entire volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity which we have spoken of. There are certain things which are shifting the entire scenario of VUCA as we go about. There are disruptive technologies on one side. There are changing business models which actually affect the way people work and the way consumers interact with you. You may have to restructure your organizational capabilities. You may have to think of new ways of doing business. You may have to engage with your consumers in newer places where you didn't find them beforehand. You may have products, you may have new innovative outputs in the form of spin-offs which change the offering set you have, maybe expand them, maybe reduce them. You may have to collaborate with others. So, therefore, mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, they become part of the entire game. And your organizations have to think and react quicker. So, you may have to have flatter organizations, more distributed rather than concentrated decision making powers. Innovation becomes a daily bread item and you try and disrupt the market before somebody else does it. And this does not necessarily limit you to your immediate neighborhood. Globalization takes you to the face of consumers the world over. What you need to have is a disciplined mind so that you are able to realize that all of these things are part of what you need to actually constantly be thinking of. You have to take problems and synthesize them. You have to ensure that all of these things that you have thought through, all of these things are in your consideration set. Your eye is out there constantly looking for new pieces of information, something you may have missed, something which can shift the entire ball game in your favor or against it. If it is in your favor, you take the advantage. If it is against, you guard against it. You have to be creative therefore and be able to look at things in a new light, in a way that it was not the case before. You also have to be respectful to your colleagues, to people you collaborate with, because they will form the entire structure, they will give you the strength that is required to succeed. And on the other hand, your consumers, because they are the ones who are helping you thrive and grow, and the world at large, because you are a corporate citizen at the end of the day. So, whatever you do has impact on the world outside. So, therefore, all these factors taken together are things that you have to be respectful about and you have to be also ethical about. Ethicality is more and more becoming important because the digitization of all data and a variety of ways and constructs of business and the ways of running a business make it more and more transparent. The more transparent you are, the more people see through you. And so, therefore, if you even step 1 inch out of line, they will catch you for it. So, it is best to actually be able to be ethical right from the get go, take certain hard calls, so that you do not end up being caught on the wrong foot. Today's conversation has a fair number of points which we want to cover. Organizational impact of VUCA, collaboration and risk management, talked about mergers, joint ventures and a variety of other things. How logistics, information and decisions impact the way you do business. Skilling, because you must do your task well, and if you need certain skills on the way, that will help you. Program management, because certain things are at a program level, certain things are at a project level. So, both things must be considered for what they are and how you must address each. And finally, the ethicality aspects, the environmental impact, futuristic planning, being ready to take on things for the world at large and the future that is to come. So, we start with the organizational impact of VUCA. We have spoken of a variety of subjects, we have spoken of a variety of ways that VUCA actually manifests itself in the world. Covering here, we will see a certain few areas which will give you a fair idea of what, and this is not exhaustive again by the way, but it will give you a fair amount of understanding as to why VUCA is important to be considered, and you need to also know that it can impact your business very, very decisively. So, therefore, automation is the first thing that is part of what VUCA is bringing in, and you will see robotics coming in a big way. AI, machine learning is, so to speak, taking away jobs, but is it really? It is taking skills onto itself, but then you have people who have to find jobs. So, you have to either find jobs that do not require those skills, or you have to get the skills so that you are sitting behind the layer of AI and actually taking certain calibrative decisions. So, that keeps you going in the right direction. You become more and more coveted as a contributor, and your role, significance, and therefore your stature in corporate sectors keeps growing. And the aid on all of these things is big data and advanced analytics. So, big data and advanced analytics helps you to take note from all interface points that are out there, and keep in mind that there are certain things which will continuously keep throwing data points. Your AI algorithms see those particular trends over a period of time, and your machine learning learns certain predictive behavior of consumers, of seasonality, of traffic patterns, of how vehicles move, of how crops will grow, of how certain surges in banking hours and stock shares, etc., will affect markets. So, all of these things are things which you can allow AI and machine learning to take the data heavy lifting aspect of, and they will give you advanced analytics you can take decisions on. So, all of these things help you take spot decisions, your ability to think scenarios with critical thinking as well as creative thinking, and your ability to create hypotheses. You have to think that, hey, is this scenario A right or is scenario B right? You put it out on test and you theorize which will work, and you check those out there in the market. You get the correct kind of data supporting whatever your hypothesis is, and you see how to market given those particular hypotheses, and their correctness will give you decision making capability. You will have better supply chains, and you will be able to draw actionable insights, so that you are able to execute certain things the way they are supposed to be executed, rather than at a point in time where you are shooting in the dark, which is not going to be helpful at all. Again, access to information and ideas. These are things which help leaders establish themselves. Capable leaders are people who understand the need for information, and because information is available, you are actually able to use that knowledge and take decisions based on those information pieces. And so, therefore, it resides whether with employees, whether with peer groups, vendors, competitors. You must be able to look at various data points. There are certain researches which are available, syndicated ones, your own marketing capabilities, your campaigns will throw up certain data points. You will use certain aspects of interaction with consumers, with the market at large, to understand where things are moving and how people are thinking and how they react. So, you will start thinking of everything in a project form. You will become an agile learner. You will make your mistakes, learn from them fast, and then you will interpret and navigate between various information sources. And these are always at your fingertips, because big data, the interfaces from which they pick it up, and machine learning analyzing all of that data and giving you inferences and insights is something which will help you take spot decisions quicker, faster, and becoming more and more accurate. You will be able to evaluate the utility and apply this entire information to solve problems. So, what you are trying to do is take a large problem, you are able to make mincemeat of that problem in the right way with your hypothesis, with your ability to test certain hypotheses out and understand what the impact of it will be. In digital marketing terms, you can use something called CBO testing, where you put out certain ad sets with certain iterations of copy and with certain shifts in the target audience, whether it be age, whether it be their economic strata, whether their geolocation, etc. And you can test how your product with a different messaging and a different target audience, which particular permutation and combination works best. And then take that with a limited budget and use it in a bigger budget scenario, and you make your campaign work better. So, this is something which you can continuously keep doing, continuously test and continuously improve upon. And you also need to find simplicity in complexity. Now, simplicity is where consumers are seeking solutions for their daily problems. Their life is very, very complicated. How do you solve that particular complication? They may have a challenge. You are solving that challenge through a product or service which you bring to them. They need to go from point A to point B. Uber comes in, takes them from one to the other. They have to take a package and receive a package. Again, Uber does that for you, but then so does Dunzo and Porter. And similarly, if you have to take a flight, you have got a variety of offerings from Yatra, Make My Trip, Booking.com, Ease My Trip and such like. So, a lot of brands come in and offer services. If you are looking for hotels, there is Trivago, there is TripAdvisor, there is Airbnb which provides its own set of offerings and such like. So, all of these things simplify the problem of going somewhere and staying for the consumer. Which does it better is the one which is going to get the most number of followers, the most number of satisfied customers. So, that typically derives how you will be able to leverage it. And it is also at the decision making level the ability to say no to a variety of things. You can say no, I do not want to take this particular path, I do not want to go into a certain kind of business model, and you simplify your strategy based on data. You reduce or increase interdependencies because you may want to have backups or you may want to reduce costs. Those are decisions you are taking, and you are talking about these. The communication part becomes very simpler, it becomes uniform, at times it becomes very, very automated as well. So, that your decisions are taken up at times by AI and algorithms as well, and they work very, very efficiently, faster than you can. So, agility and innovation is the next step. This is not just our ability to think things through, react to them, but also the systems, processes and algorithms that we put into play today, so that they actually solve problems faster than the problems can actually be thrown up. So, the new age thinker worker, like people who are aware of such scenarios, who are skilled or are upskilling themselves, they want better decision making skills, more autonomy, and they want more control over the decision making, and therefore, that means more respect and more accountability for what they do. Their work is great, so they will get rewarded. If it is not great, okay, they will take the blow for it. So, the traditional organizations must loosen their traditional rigid line, and staff structures, leaner, flatter organizations thrive better, because it is decentralizing power, giving people the ability to take decisions and move in the right direction, which gives rapid consultation, team and group working, and finally, if you make certain movements, if you run a certain project, you get peer learning. So, you share notes. So, all of these things together help the organization learn faster and deploy best results, tested, implemented and effective. And that also leads to better customer strategies. So, when you are looking at customers, customers will keep changing their loyalties, their usage habits, their media considerations, their content consumption profiles and so on and so forth. So, how do you change your strategy to meet these particular aspects? You keep constant conversations going on focused on the consumer. You understand what the challenges are, how they are working on certain few things, what they want out of that particular scenario, and how your product solutions and how your service solutions are solving those particular things. Data analytics gives you feedback, behavioral sciences helps you interpret what they actually think. So, their fears, their desires, etc., are part of the input that you get, and we call them insights. Behavioral sciences help you decode those insights. Also, factors like shifting geopolitical and economic power, we have spoken about these volatile occurrences. You have seen economic changes, US dollar losing its dominance, the UPI gaining in its spread and acceptance the world over. These are examples. The BRICS is apparently going to start a bank. So, all of these things are conversations of how the market dynamics are changing and how it will affect the way global businesses are run. So, all of these factors, mobile payments, India is one of the leading players in this, and digital currencies, because we are talking about RuPay now. So, that starts to take center stage. If we are leapfrogging the technological revolution, then we are helping countries like even the UAE or Nepal or Malaysia pick it up. Russia is very keen on taking up UPI today. These are aspects of how we can particularly excel in the current scenario where technology, digital currencies and businesses move. And your resource distribution is also going to shift. Earlier, you saw a brain drain from India. You saw a large number of people moving out. Maybe not all of them were very skilled. So, you had some poorly skilled young workers going out, but they go out, they learn the skill and they stay back, and those brains never come back and add to the economy of the country. Now, you will probably see that people will want to close borders and want to retain staff there, and all problems which are typically of customer service, they can at the basic level for now be met with AI solutions, and algorithms can take care of those things. If there are larger problems, limited teams with minimum operating structures can address those. So, then that reverse brain drain then brings those minds back to India. India has a bigger market, has more things to offer, has more opportunity as well, and so therefore, people can probably prosper here as well. So, you may find that exact thing happening in the future. All of these things are factors which can suddenly shift the balance in unpredictable ways unless you are tuned into the data and you are able to actually pick up what these trends are. You are able to spot these trends and move ahead and meet them before they are actually making a splash in the market. Also, you have to be going further more and more prepared about diversity and inclusion. And it does not just mean the gender diversity, etc., but it is also about the kind of thought processes, and it is also about the generational differences that are there. It is also about how there are disparities in the economic background, in the educational background of people, in the cultural background of people, and so they bring in a lot more in terms of what they have learned, their life lessons, their skills, their talents. They bring a lot many more different ways of looking at a particular project, a particular problem, a particular objective challenge and solving them. Taking all of these aspects, giving them a certain shared voice and allowing them to actually put their opinions and talents and skills, into play in a team which respects them, gives them that ability to become team players, and the organization benefits from it. These skills and capabilities are required and they will continuously be required by organizations. So, if there are certain people who have more skills, they will be prized, certain people who have lesser skills, they will be put, I think either the sideways or they are improving, picking skills up, then they may again join back the bandwagon. So, therefore, robotics, automation and AI, these are things which are going to disrupt jobs as such. But why? Because there are certain people, skilled people who need to be behind the robotics, the AI, the machine learning and ensure that it does not fall out of place. The right kind of assessment, the right kind of analytics is happening. So, the highly skilled professionals is who we must slowly persevere to be, and BCG already shows that US and Germany are seeking a shortage of qualified professionals. So, therefore, digital transformation which shifts the world to a certain specific kind of completely digital interaction based economies, that shift is not getting fully actualized because there are certain people who are not there filling in the shoes, getting the digital machinery working up and going, and therefore, it is hindering the chances of the complete transformation that is expected. So, all of these factors bring into consideration how there are certain tasks, there are certain jobs, there are certain roles which are there to be filled. Your ability to deliver in certain scenarios like this defines whether you will be part of that particular conversation or not. Now, we have seen a lot in recent times. We have seen Make in America, Make in India, a variety of other countries are also saying that, hey, let us have businesses do work inside of our country. Individualism and entrepreneurship are being celebrated, they are being fostered, they are being allowed to have their own space and to grow. So, outside of the workplace, people getting empowered by digital platforms and ecosystems are choosing entrepreneurship and self-deployment over traditional corporate employment. So, they are trying to ensure that the top graduates from IITs and IIMs are going towards startups, and they do not want to be just some corporate bigwig in a particular established organization. They have a purpose. They want to exhibit who they are, what they have thought through, what they believe in out there in the market. They want to make a difference. They want to be seen and remembered that, hey, here is the guy who's become the next big thing when it comes to data analytics, the next big thing when it comes to robotics, the next big things in food delivery, in the textiles, in cultural preservation, you name it. Lots of people have lots of offerings, and it varies from making of safety pins to making telemetry and rocketry equipment. We have a lot of startups that way in India who have started to find their own space, and that is exactly, in fact, very recently India has launched a 3D printed rocket capable of reaching escape velocity. So, that reduces the cost of the launching of astronomical objects, and obviously satellites are part of that. So, that kind of innovation is something which somebody has thought through, and that exhibits their ability to think apart from the crowd and also to create a viable business out of it. So, individualism and entrepreneurship are key to the success of any economy, the success of any particular market, and so therefore, those things will be becoming big and strong, and you will see people walking into that space. And the recent pandemic that has passed us by, it has brought a lot of focus on this one particular thing, well-being. And it is not just how healthy you are, how fat or thin, or how capable at running a mile you are, but it is also about work-life balance. It is also about finding satisfaction. It is not just about making truckloads of money. So, well-being emotionally, well-being socially, well-being ethically, all of these factors have started to matter, especially amongst the younger generations. They see this as a big important point of consideration in their lives and careers, and so therefore, that well-being is something which people are wanting to bring in as part of their entire life, their entire work balance, and the careers that they have. And they also want it as part of organizations that they are setting up or they are joining. And therefore, it derives from purpose. Purpose is something which talks about how we are, what we think, who we want to be, and aspects like that. So, therefore, all these things bring into perspective the way people want to drive organizations, people want to set an example of what kind of offerings they have in terms of services, in terms of products, in the way they meet the needs of consumers, etc. And so, therefore, all of these factors drive the entire belief system, whether it is inward looking at employees, at stakeholders within the organization, or whether it is the consumer. So, all of these aspects are driven by purpose and well-being. So, here we look at the next aspect, which is collaboration and risk management. Now, collaboration is important because there is strength in numbers, and risk is something which is exacerbated by your lack of knowledge about certain things. VUCA automatically brings into play a lot many things and puts them in your consideration set. It keeps them in your peripheral vision. It makes you aware that, hey, there are chances things can go wrong and you need to be better prepared. You need to have an internal alarm system in your thinking, in your strategizing, that you have to prepare for unforeseen, unprecedented circumstances. So, you have to recognize and realize the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguousness of how things are about you. And therefore, it also provides you with the particular stops that can stem the actual calamity that can come from this. So, what is volatile? And what is uncertain, you can beat by being understanding of that particular situation. So, what helps you drive that understanding is vision. If you have a certain objective in your mind that I want to manifest a certain kind of future, certain kind of expected outcome or result, that particular vision is going to drive the way you are going to run that particular business, enterprise, organization or brand of yours. And that particular vision will give you the ability to look at all the factors that are going to stop you or check you, and so therefore, you will have a better understanding. And because things are complex, so you will want to simplify things, giving you through your vision and the understanding you are deriving, you will get clarity. You will try to take a larger problem, you will try to make shorter, smaller, more easily dealable pieces of the same, and you will start solving each particular small piece for what it is worth. Once done, you will put them all back together and you will create the entire whole, and you will actually see that you have created value. This interplay of leadership, learning and strategy provides energy or sustenance to the anchors. So, the anchors are the people at the entire core. So, you have got organizational learning, you have got leadership and the strategy that they derive. And so, therefore, there are things that they need to be able to do this, and all of these things they do with agility. They make their mistakes quickly, they learn from them and they move on and implement those learnings. So, those are aspects of what people are going about. You develop a certain foresight, because you are doing this day in, day out. You are able to foresee that there are certain things which can happen, and even if you do not have a full handle on what those things could be, you develop foresight that this is the general space in which the problem will be. So, hence you must start thinking, if you can't have the skill sets to solve them by yourself, you get into collaboration, get the right people or get the right partners, and you collaborate and solve them, which gives you critical and strategic thinking capabilities in that particular space. You are able to analyze a problem and see what it is worth. And as you start practicing, you create a corporate community habit. Everybody in your organization thinks with agility, they are bought into the vision, they always try and understand the problems and they always try and derive clarity, giving them the necessary foresight. And that foresight is a continuous process, everybody is doing it and it becomes a practice. They always try and find out better ways to do things, newer ways to come up with solutions and trying to improve, innovate all of the while, and therefore leading to collaborations, JVs, mergers and acquisitions and so on and so forth. So, these are factors through which the company, the organization continuously keeps improving and it keeps innovating and it is always relevant. VUCA is very complex. The way you can plan it, it looks very complicated, very complex, but if you look at in a structured way, you have a macro environment and you have the impact. So, you have got a trigger, something which causes it, you have an impact which is the change that it brings, and how do you manage risk in that particular situation. So, therefore, what steps you must take. So, if there is something which is complex, then you will have, when it comes to technological things, you have got digitization, you have got technological advances, you have lesser time in product cycles and increased product diversification, you are creating more variants, you are creating sub variants, you are creating lot many price point based variations, etc. So, therefore, you have to have better business operations at one side and you have to always keep checking for acceptance in the market. So, therefore, your A/B testing, your product testing, your product development cycles, they become far more faster. You have to quickly decide whether to take a product to market or drop it. And therefore, what you try and do is you create simplicity, you create certainty, stability and uniqueness. Uniqueness is something which comes from differentiation. So, therefore, you put in countermeasures. What kind of countermeasures? You assemble a team that assesses all the responsibilities immediately after what risk you are trying to identify, and you enable instant counteracting measurements. So, you are checking for whether a sample A of face cream is better than sample B. You put out both teams to a test audience and you find that there is a certain irritant in face B. You may be able to sell it to a market at lower price, but the irritant may cause skin problems, you immediately drop it. So, you get certainty like that. So, there are various things which you must consider, you must put in as practice within the organization and help fine tune the process as you go forward. In terms of economical considerations, how globalization of markets is something which will affect your business, whether it be input of particular raw products or whether it be export of your products outside of the country, and how do you actually expand into other geographies, do mergers and acquisitions and acquire organizations which give you that particular operating strength in other geographies. All of these things are factors. So, there are lots of things which can become part of your risk management assessment. There are technological, economical, ecological factors, then socio-cultural factors, and finally political and legal factors. These will be discussed in much more detail as we go into detailed studies of all these factors inside further segments of our courses. But just to give you an overview, there are lots of things that must be thought of, and managers need to be aware that there are many factors which can impact their particular way of working. Which brings us to logistics, information and decisions. Now, you have heard and we have been hearing since the Y2K bug happened that IT jobs typically would be offshored from Western countries to countries which have a lower economy, but higher skill set compared to others like India. And so, therefore, offshoring started off in a big way. So, in fact, it became a very slang cuss word that your job is being Bangalored, which means your job went to Bangalore and somebody sitting there is actually working on your job. Now, this has started causing reverse problems now for the economies which started offshoring earlier on. You are getting higher overhead costs because you have to set up an organization, you have to ensure that the people there get certain basic benefits, you have to ensure there is certain amount of training so that those people do not put a bomb in your ways of working and drop the way your brand credibility goes. Then labor volatility, there are certain changes in the organization, labor laws in those countries where you are offshoring to, which could affect the way your business runs. Honda had faced something in 2010 in China when there was a labor lockout. So, things like that can affect your delivery and your top line, bottom line both. Quality control issues, because you are not directly controlling the quality of what you are creating. And then there are logistical complexities we have talked about in our previous module about how microchips coming out of Taiwan can get affected because of geopolitical considerations, and they affect many more manufacturers and OEMs the world over. So, these are things which cause problems. Intellectual property rights are also a big issue, because if somebody is manufacturing for you and they have in fact taken what your intellectual property is and reverse engineer it and are creating your product, but for a cheaper price, you have done all the research, they are getting all the money. So, these are challenges which are very real and very threatening to economies, very threatening to organizations which are offshoring. So, all of these impacts are created and must be warded by organizations so that they are able to thrive and survive. Now, there are societal impacts, because at times your considerations of how India has stopped taking Diwali small knickknacks which are bought from diyas to a variety of other items, they want to now prefer buying Indian products. They have stopped taking Chinese products, and this has happened for a certain specific time in the recent history and memory. So, these are things which create job displacements, and it has impacted China in that sense. They have lost a lot of money out of that. And when you send jobs outside your country, as they grow in economic capabilities, they will want that they get higher welfare and they will want more out of that particular job scenario. And this can also increase the prices on one side, and if you do not provide this, the company image is hit, and it can also, when publicized, create a consumer backlash. Natural disasters can affect you, and there are other hidden costs. So, there are coordination costs, monitoring costs, research and development, distance, and at times morale issues also. A variety of factors can affect morale, and this can raise costs humongously from paltry 14 to a massive 60%, which may affect your bottom line as well. And the reversal to this is also now starting to happen, and AI and ML have become a major factor, because if something is routine, something which can be taken on by a machine, or something which can be taken on by an algorithm can be, people are opting for that. So, there is reduced risk of complexity. Quality control is better because it is a machine taking care of things, human error is limited, and you have got logistics savings. So, you are keeping all of it within your particular geographical areas. There are enhanced customer responsiveness ideas coming in here, because if you are closer to the market where you are operating in, then your adaptation to customer needs is automatically faster, and it gives you more productivity, cost efficiency, and your native employees, their employee morale is increased, because the Bangalore jobs are suddenly back in Baltimore. And your ability to analyze what decisions you are taking is simply faster, because the team is limited. The geography within which you are operating gives you quicker access to employees, crucial decision makers, etc., and stakeholders. So, you are able to get to the root of the problem and solve it very, very quickly. So, the next point, which therefore throws up as a challenge, is skilling, and therefore, who leaders are and what actually gives them the power to showcase better ways of working. What kind of skills do leaders need to have, so that they can take their organizations and bring about a good amount of growth and a certain amount of abundance to them. Good leaders bring in curiosity. They always are probing for newer, better, faster, cheaper, and more effective ways of doing business, and they take learning from failures in their stride, implement those learnings, and they break the fixed mindsets. This will happen this way because it has been happening this way from when the world was created. No, there are newer ways, possible ways. You reinvent the wheel if it is required, and they are resilient. They do not cow down in the face of any external threat, any internal threat. They are there, they stand with their organization, and they are able to take that onslaught face front. And they also believe in learning, which is a core of their ability to operate. So, they learn for all their life. They learn from past, present, and future. They reflect on successes and failures which are driving personal growth. They are conducting regular self assessments and are updated about what is going on, and in the future whatever is happening, they believe that the ability to anticipate change gives them a little of a jump into the ability to attack that particular change before it actually arrives. And in terms of organizational barriers, hierarchical structures stifle cross functional learning. So, therefore, leaner, flatter organizations work better nowadays, and informal learning. So, you generally do not go just for structured learning, but quickly pick up usable, work friendly skills and put them into use. And when you are doing it inside of an agile system, you implement, you test it out whether it is a good fit for your organization. If it works, great, pass the message on. If it is not, great, still pass the message on and say, hey, nobody touches that. Because the faster you are able to react to certain situations like that, it gives you a certain ability to preempt whatever is coming next. And therefore, you are prepared for a changing future. So, you develop a growth mindset. You never say that we will do only as much as we can within this particular ambit. We will never want to grow beyond it. It is not our way. You embrace that change is a reality, and you create a constant mental radar for spotting these opportunities. We have talked about trend spotting in the past, and you have 7 survival skills which you can actually bring into play. You shift your product from rote learning to develop soft skills, adaptability, creativity, problem solving, and you look at the VUCA world continuously. So, when you are changing the way you are educated, you are redefining education, you are saying that it is not just rote learning, you are not just going to read books, go to a lab, do practicals and be a better performer or a better professional. You will take knowledge the way it is offered from whichever source that brings that particular piece of knowledge up, and you will quickly implement it, see if it is worth your while to implement it and benefit from it, or you will quickly discard it and move on to something which is more apt for your requirements. Decision making, creative thinking and critical thinking, all of these things become skills which become core to your offering, to your particular individual persona. And this is typically what is required for the 21st century workplace. So, you keep evolving skills as per the demand of industry, and you have survival skills in space, because if the situations are volatile, you need to know that you have to shift, you have to change tech, you have to drop a product line. Kodak did not reinvent themselves and kept on producing film. They thought film would never die out, but digital cameras, digital photography, digital filmography got the world by storm. Yes, they still do manufacture film, but it is not to the days when they were leading the market, because film has lost out to digital storage. The same thing happened to Nokia. Nokia thought that their Symbian operating system was technology's gift to mankind, but there were better ways, and it was amply showcased by iOS from Apple and Android from Google. And the interactivity, the QWERTY keypad going off, BlackBerry lost out because of that. Lot of technology shifts actually are very, very relevant, and because the speed at which technology is shifting gives you reason to think, and therefore, it keeps you always contemplating of what is going to come next and gives you survival skills, and also gives you abilities to see and perceive the changes before they arrive. So, you assume certain things, you look at scenarios and you then test the scenarios for evidence whether this is actually happening. Your hypothesis is tested out there in the market, and you derive your conclusions from the same, whether this is going to work in our favor or whether it is not. If it is, pick it up; if it is not, drop it, which is the agile system. You are continuously improving what you are doing, and you take all of this in the context of scenarios happening out there. So, it is real world wisdom. It is not something which you have just thought in your own mind and are implementing. You actually test it out there, and digital actually gives you those capabilities to test it out there in the market, and so you are able to do it. And this agility, for example, businesses like Nike, your Mark Parker emphasizes avoiding the complacency and staying agile to prevent stagnation. So, this is something which big businesses have also thought of, and in fact, if you see in product lines, Zara's fast fashion model, something which Zara has really pushed out there in the world, you will see that they are creating design as well as a supply chain, and it has a 15-day turnaround from concept to retail. They bring in the particular line of fashion, you go in for a certain very specific period where you can get that particular line of clothing, you blink and that particular piece of clothing is gone. So, you will never find it back again in a Zara store. This is what Zara has as its proposition. This appeals to a certain niche of customers who will pay anything to buy a Zara, because that is what it stands for. So, this showcases their innovation, and quick adaptation to trends. Consumers want this, a certain niche definitely does, and so therefore, Zara is catering to that and have managed to win that particular audience over. So, which brings us to the next part, which is program management. Programs are ways where you've got a certain process and you are automating it, making it perfect, ensuring that it just works like a well-oiled Swiss watch machine. You know, it's got its cogs, its levers, and it keeps delivering day in, day out, takes a beating, keeps on taking. But the systemic program management is something which gets derived out of finding certain ways of doing things, whether the right or the wrong ways is found out through projects. So, projects are different from programs. Projects are exploratory ways to see if certain things will work. You have defined a certain task, you have an objective to reach, you define a certain budget, a timeline, a certain team which can get it done, and you put it into a project, and you keep addressing the way that particular project is working. If it works out and you've got evidence that it will work out in any scenario, you bring it out and implement it, which comes out in the form of a systemic program. So, these are approaches which managers bring into play. Here you can actually see, in terms of program, you've got orders coming in and your products going out. So, ongoing order clarification is something which you can bring into a program system, and you can keep checking whether your orders are from the current vendors or stakeholders who you have, and whether they are asking for the right kind of items. Can you prepare them in time? Can you provide it to them? And if you can do so, then they are always going to receive the product promised and never have a problem. This gives you a purpose and a change mindset. So, if suddenly there is a certain requirement which has come, which is not expected, you are able to address that particular change, and you are ready in terms of the way your team thinks, in the way your personnel adapt to it, and it is something that gives them that purpose that we have always got to be ready for a scenario. And this helps you prepare this in terms of a configuration. Your system is capable enough to ensure that you can get the right logistics, you can get the input raw products and come out with the finished output to meet your requirements, your demand. And you couple projects and programs right here. Your projects tell you that this particular thing is possible and it is implementable. Once it is, you bring out programs like we spoke of, and you put those programs out there as a running process. And when you do so, you actually keep checking how much can it be stretched. So, therefore, the scope of it, and you actually check whether this is being spoken of rightly, whether the people, the stakeholders who are taking care of it, who are affected by it, they get the right kind of content. So, whether they are aware that, hey, this is what you are going to receive and this is exactly how it is going to be defined for you. Which brings us to the last aspect, which is environmental impact and planning for the future. Now, when it comes to the environment and the future, the world that we live in is again fast changing. It is just not the business scenario that is changing. The environment itself is taking a drastic change. You have seen ice caps melting, you have seen water levels rise, certain climatic conditions, droughts, storms, famines, tsunamis and what have you. So, there is a lot of damage which is resulting from globalized corporate activity. Companies are causing these damages, and so therefore, they need to be prepared that they must not do it just to have profits, and if there is some damage being caused, they have to make good, so that the entire activity leaves behind more for the next generation to come, because if we do not do so, then over time we will be impacting the very consumers who are funding our business, because if they move away from us, or if they, God forbid, have a worse kind of outcome, then they may just not be there physically. So, those things are things that can disproportionately impact marginalized communities, because certain people who are not that empowered may get affected, and they will not have the capabilities to fight back as well, which leads to the ethical dilemmas as well. So, this is the positive correlation which an organization must drive, and there are certain vulnerable populations. So, mining is one particular industry which has a lot of effect on the environment, on communities. So, therefore, they must be treated properly. You must ensure that the livelihoods of people who are affected by mining, they get the right kind of recompense. Their communities, their their way of life, their civilizational constructs, they get saved and so forth, so on and so forth. And if there is any environmental hazard, that is not encouraged, and if it is there, then it must be made good, especially in emerging economies, because emerging economies are taking the world further. The developed economies have already sort of reached a certain plateau. The emerging economies are where all the action is. So, the onus of keeping these things tight and very, very effectively future forward thinking. So, like how India is looking at taking up solar in a big way and is going carbon neutral by 2070 or so, is a project that the organizational structure in government has picked up for itself. They want to make the country go carbon neutral by 2070. So, this is something which we are taking on in a big way. We have taken that challenge up for ourselves, and developed countries obviously have a better lifestyle and way of working. So, they are already getting past this in more ways than one, but the onus has now landed at our doorstep. So, we must make moves that way. Here we must also look at what kind of impact is actually generated, who are the people who are affected. So, therefore, the kind of stakeholders we have inside of that entire construct, and what are the ways we will come to know that there is some sort of environmental impact getting created, and what kind of thresholds have we planned for. So, that there are triggers, there are certain alarm bells that go off and say, hey, this much and no more, which is something which comes from timely checks and audits, whether the processes that we have put in place, are they active, are they working, are they really giving us the pieces of information that we are seeking from them. And when you are a corporate citizen, then you take on the role of corporate social responsibility. This again has a large role in giving back to the society, to the economy, to the world at large, which organizations must take up. And not only does it give them a good standing when it comes to how they are seen in the business environment, it also gives them a good brand image. It gives them a certain definition of purpose, and that also creates a tribe of consumers around that particular organization. So, this in all is what we had time for today, and it covers how at the core of VUCA we have complexity, which is the main offering of the entire VUCA construct. Everything, volatility, uncertainty and ambiguity are all something which stem from the complexity. It is not a simple task. So, therefore, marketing is something which takes all the information inside and outside of the organization and merges them together. So, therefore, they will always be at the forefront of managing the entire information and communication flow. And today we have data, we have agile teams, so we can decide quicker, we can make smarter, more informed decisions. So, these are the skills which we also must process and actually procure. And so, therefore, these will be in the highest demand in the future. Managers of today must be prepared for tomorrow in this particular way in the coming times. And so, therefore, marketers must prepare to meet these particular challenges. With that, we come to the end of today's module. Up next time we will be speaking on the viability and organizational capabilities of organizations and their products and their services in the light of market realities. So, until next time, I thank you for your kind consideration, and I hope to see you very soon.
Hello and welcome to this piece of literary snippet. We usually know William Shakespeare as the most revered figure in the history of English literature. But we often tend to forget that he has also been one of the most hated figures in literature. And here I'm not talking only about those boys and girls who have to memorize long sections from Macbeth or King Lear or Julius Caesar before they can go and sit for their school or college exams. But I'm also talking about people who are themselves quite famous authors. Tolstoy, for instance, considered the writings of Shakespeare to be, and I quote, crude, immoral, vulgar, and senseless. George Bernard Shaw absolutely loathed Shakespeare, as he did Homer. But perhaps no other criticism about Shakespeare is more damaging than the one which says that Shakespeare is a marvelous storyteller, provided someone has told him the story earlier. Now, this piece of criticism is particularly damaging because it is true. None of Shakespeare's plays contain any original story whatsoever. They are all written using pre-existing materials, pre-existing stories. Now, does that diminish the stature of Shakespeare as a dramatist? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. See you in the next episode of Literary Snippets.